Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I am Brian Lusk. Thank you for joining me today. Uh, this is going to be another weird stream. I'm using my phone for all the display stuff here, which means, of course, that the resolution is going to be display stuff here, which means, of course, that the resolution is going to be display stuff here. That is which means, of course, that the resolution is going to be display stuff here. That is which means, of course, that the resolution is going to be display stuff here. That is which means, of course, that the resolution is going to be display stuff here. That is which means, of course, all right, something I've got is playing things at the same time I'm using them, so bear with me a second while I fix that. Let's see. And surely bear with me just a moment or two here. All right, where's it coming from? Oh, okay. That's where it's coming from. I'll come back to that later, and we should be able to get started here now that we've gotten rid of the duplicate of my voice here. So let's go ahead and get rolling right off the bat here as I get things put back together. We'll start off with this with some information, well, disinformation, I might say. The the Justice Department has announced that they have managed to disrupt a Russian-run AI-enabled Twitter disinformation bot farm. That's 1,000 accounts on Twitter/X as alone, where they masqueraded as Americans and promoted Russian government narratives. Now, we all know that disinformation has been running rampant lately, and there's been many examples of it coming through. This is more just so you know that these operations are happening. There's a reason why the sentiments in America change so wildly, and that's because we are subject to a disinformation campaign above any other. It's constant, it's insidious, and it's intended to make you doubt everything you hear. So let's go ahead and keep on rolling here. And well, let's start by translating this guy right here. On the channel Television Toronto, there was a cool open source intelligence study about who creates deepfakes about the armed forces. Using a specific example, the investigators showed how Telegram channels masquerading as being run by the Ukrainian military are elements of a network for the spread of deepfakes by the occupiers. Most of such channels can publish 80 or even 90% pro Ukrainian content in order to throw in deepfakes made by Russians at the right moment. Therefore, choose more carefully what to read and share. And this is just one of the crazy things that causes so much trouble with tracking what's going on with the war. Specifically, that it's there's so many accounts. In fact, I've seen several that claim to be pro-Ukrainian, and they'll put out some great content. They'll build a following, and then all of a sudden, left turn. And you're like, where did that even come from? Well, it came right out of the Kremlin. How in the world did these people get duped? And so it's a lot of things of trying to sort through it, understand it, and sometimes it's just plain patience, waiting to see what's going to come out as the days go by. And that's kind of just one of the cautions that are associated here. I'm not saying that you don't need to go out and check out the media. In fact, I encourage you to. I want you to be well informed in every way that I can, and I vet as many sources as I can. But I can't vet them all, and I can't even guarantee that certain information is 100% accurate. That said, I try my best to make sure that the best possible information that I can find from multiple sources is what gets to you. And there's a lot of other channels that do the same. I highly recommend you watch out for Ryan Macbeth. If you don't mind talking about Strike Gum all the time, you can go and look at Combat Veteran Reacts, and he does a very good job of sorting his sources. I don't remember him hitting any negative points there. So there's a lot of good sources out there. Just understand that there could come a time when one of your favorite sources may turn out to have been a Kremlin plant. And therefore, keep an eye on even those people that you trust. Keep an eye on me too. I'm not a Kremlin plant, but am just as subject to all the propaganda as everybody else. I try and do my due diligence. Now let's go ahead and move on to what happened at this NATO summit, or at least some of the details around what happened with Ukraine. President Biden addressed the summit, stating, "Today I'm announcing a historic donation of air defense equipment for Ukraine. The U.S., Germany, Netherlands, Romania, and Italy will provide Ukraine with equipment for 5 additional strategic air defense systems. In the coming months, the U.S. and our partners intend to provide Ukraine with dozens of tactical air defense systems. The U.S. will make sure that when we export critical air defense interceptors, Ukraine goes to the front of the line. They will get these systems before anyone else gets them." This is they've already kind of announced that initial putting a Ukraine at the front of the line and working those systems in their favor first. This is just making it official in front of a NATO audience here. NATO will also call for 32 nations to put in place civil defense plans at the DC summit to use in case of an Article 5 level attack. This means NATO is saying to their nations, be prepared. Hopefully, they're being prepared for an attack that never comes. Those are the best preparations possible. It means that even if something goes wrong, you are prepared in case it does. And the best part about those types of preparations is often they're useful for more than one purpose. Things that are preparing for war often are getting supplies and equipment in the right places. Much of that supplies could be used for a natural disaster. Much of that organization could be used for a wildfire or an evacuation due to a volcano erupting, since that's one of the big stories that's been going on for a while over there. So absolutely get these preparations done. They're calling for NATO countries to do so. Several NATO countries have made the official announcement on the air defense package. They did mention specifically 3 Patriot defense batteries donated by the U.S., Germany, and Romania, a composite Patriot battery from the Netherlands, and a SAMP-T system from Italy. Again, there's just more details on that initial announcement. Then there's this interesting video from Jens Stoltenberg, the current NATO chief over here. Let's go ahead and watch this one, and I'm going to try and bring it back to the beginning.
It is not straightforward. But let's be honest. Not even our support for Ukraine has been a given. It is not straightforward, because our support comes with costs and risks. The reality is there are no cost-free options with an aggressive Russia as a neighbor. There are no risk-free options in a war. And remember, the biggest cost and the greatest risk will be if Russia wins in Ukraine. We cannot let that happen. Not only would it embolden President Putin, it will also embolden other authoritarian leaders in Iran, in North Korea, and China. They all support Russia's brutal war. They all want NATO to fail. So the outcome of this war will shape global security for decades to come.
And that's from Jens Stoltenberg, and he's echoing a lot of the same things that I've been saying over time, which I've picked up from other sources as well. I'm not going to claim to be the progenitor of this idea that other dictators are being emboldened by this war in Ukraine and the West's lackluster response to it. Instead, I'm going to just state that I think they're all seeing the same thing that I am. And that is that dictators across the world are saying, U.S. isn't really doing as much as they could to stop Russia. Why is that? And they're looking for their opportunities. By the way, Luciano, glad to see you as well. Always glad to have you on board. Defense of Ukraine, which is an official Ukrainian government account, put out this message stating more Patriot systems for Ukraine equals more lives saved. We are grateful to our NATO allies. I always find it interesting, and I think it's a good thing for them to do, to actually give thanks for the systems that are given to them. They will thank every nation for even the smallest things. Every little donation counts to Ukraine right now. Some other things that seem to have come out of this: F-16s were pledged by one of the nations, and they're supposed to be here this summer. They've now made that statement multiple times. F-16s, a multi-billion dollar pledge, more Patriots, irreversible membership, which I'll talk about in just a moment here. What Ukraine will and will not receive in the NATO summit here. The final communique will pledge $40 billion next year in NATO military aid with annual contributions from member states, according to the Ukrainians. It'll also announce two significant diplomatic developments. Firstly, there will be a meeting of all countries who have signed security agreements with Ukraine, with the deepening of cooperation and coordination between the signatory countries, as it is expected. Second, NATO will establish a new structure tasked with coordinating assistance and bringing the Ukrainian military closer to NATO standards. It's not currently known who will head this mission, with the U.S. pushing for an American and everybody else pushing for a European. So that's kind of what came out of this NATO summit. Uh, Perhaps not everything that Ukraine might have wished, and yet they still came out with quite a bit more than it could have been. Um, they did not receive a formal membership invitation. That's pretty significant and a big blow. However, um, Secretary Blinken stated that Ukraine was irreversibly on the path to joining NATO as long as it continues reforms, and suggested that it had only a short bridge to join the defensive alliance. I suspect that many of the allies that are associated with this would love to have this war in Ukraine resolved first. Um, Obviously, though, that's not going to really happen that easily. So, you know, we'll see what happens with it overall. Now let's go ahead and move on to the situation with the children's hospital that was bombed in Ukraine. We mentioned the other day that a lot of Russian sources were trying to blame Ukraine for it being an air defense missile. Video evidence emerged. Some people tried to say it was an American AIM 120. The video doesn't match that at all. Many sources have gone through the video, and compared it to existing equipment, and it was clearly X-101 or KH-101 missile that was on an attack profile that went straight into that children's hospital, making it a deliberate action. However, there's been some interesting fallout from Astra, which is a Russian language news source, but not necessarily purely pro Russian. The niece of Russia's defense minister, that would be Belousov, Andrei Belousov, put out this statement. Now, she lives in the United States. Blogger Natalia Vertinskaya recorded a video in which she called herself the niece of the Russian defense minister Andrei Belousov. She appealed to her uncle against the backdrop of recent events related to the shelling of hospitals in Kyiv, urging him to stop and not send Russians to certain death. In her appeal, she said that 10 years ago she lived in Kyiv and regularly visited the Okhmadet Children's Hospital with her disabled child. According to Natalia, Belousov's cousin still lives in Kyiv, and his grandmother, grandfather, and aunt are buried there. I just urge you, Uncle Andre, to think about what you are doing and stop. Please stop. I always knew you as a kind, decent person. I want you to think, rethink everything, and stop. Uncle Andre, please pray. Think about what you are doing. This cannot go on any longer. Feels like a very heartfelt plea. Still, there's other news around that situation here. Um, One of the things that came out, and this is from the Kyiv Post, after the massive Russian missile attack on Ukraine on July 8th, Ukrainians once again showed the core traits of their nation. You can see right here they are united, unbreakable, brave, courageous, and fearless. In just 22 hours, Ukrainians raised 250 million hryvnias, or about 6.2 million US dollars, to aid those affected by the missile strike on the Okhmadot Children's Hospital. The fundraising was organized by the charitable platform United 24 and the Ukrainian digital bank Monobank. That's a lot of money for the citizens of Ukraine in their situation to put together to try and rebuild that children's hospital. Other places they expressed their displeasure with Russia. The Russian embassy in the Czech Republic was splattered with red paint, simulating blood, after the strike on a children's cancer hospital in Kyiv. People elsewhere are expressing their anger. Ukraine's top companies have also announced they will help to rebuild the Kyiv Children's Hospital. Their most successful companies announced they will help rebuild the destroyed Okhmadot Children's Hospital and are now providing food, water, and transportation for patients and staff. Even McDonald's announced that all the profits from the sale of cheeseburgers on July 9th will be directed to support the Children's Hospital Okhmadot in Kyiv. And they talk about the situation. Even McDonald's is getting in on the charitable train. But Russian trolls will Russian troll. An investigation by Bellingcat into Russia's missile strike on a Kyiv Children's Hospital has been marked as potentially spammy or unsafe on Twitter/X after it was first published on July 9th. Meaning if you followed the link, probably, and it may have changed this, I'm not going to try it right now. If you try to follow this link, Twitter will tell you that it's a potentially unsafe or spammy link. Now, Bellingcat has been a reliable staple of open source intelligence in multiple conflicts. These are the people that really put their time and their research into things. So that tells me that a whole bunch of Russian trolls reported this as a potentially bad link to try and get it taken down by Twitter. And that's kind of the headlines right there. Let's go ahead and pop over into Ukraine itself for a bit or two. Now, President Zelensky declared that they can push Russia out of southern Ukraine if the United States lifts restrictions on deep strikes. Again, according to President Zelensky, they're asking for a little bit more of a free hand to be able to strike airfields in particular, the ones where they're launching their bombers from in order to attack Ukraine. And if they can reliably put Western equipment on target, they'll be able to stop those bombers from even taking off. Because that's what's really causing the huge amounts of damage. That KH-101 was an air-launched cruise missile. It wasn't just some launcher somewhere sitting around. And it took off from an airfield a couple of 100 miles away, outside the range of what the U.S. is allowing Ukraine to strike. And yet that's just as much a military target as any other. Additional information on that. It's just, this is Zelensky's actual statement on it. Let's see if we can get this pulled up. I don't remember. I think it's in English, so bear with me.
From where Russia, of course, we have permission to use HIMARS through them three. Is it enough? Of course not. It's only a little number of those troops and bases which from where Russia uses missiles. If you take the example of Kharkiv, so they attack they use per month 1,500. Do we have, of course, can we use Patriots or something similar? For example, yes. But can we? No. because we doesn't have to use, doesn't have possibility to use 3,500 missiles of Patriots just to defending. That's why you can't use is guided bombs using jets, where the jets stay on their bases. Do we know these bases? Yes. Yes.
But you're not being allowed to.
But we can't. But somebody except us have to say yes. Yeah, stay on the distance from our border from 150 kilometers to 1,000. But mostly what is very important, from 150 to 500 kilometers. That means that if we have this, then we have, and if we can use it on the territory of Russia, especially on these military targets, if we can do it. Because the guided bomb is the difference between guided bomb and missiles. Of course, missiles can go 2,000 kilometers, yes, but thousands, they don't have thousands of missiles, but they have thousands of such guided bombs. Manage this problem and children will live. Of course, we have permission.
That was President Zelensky's comment on his request for the U.S. to allow them to strike deep into Russia against clear military targets that are bombing, well, the Children's Hospital and other purely civilian targets. Hi, Robbie. Glad to have you on board. We're moving along here at a pretty good pace. Always glad to have you here. That's pretty much the news out of Ukraine itself. I went through a lot of stuff today and during my breaks and things like that. So let's go ahead and move on to the news out of Russia. And once again, I do want to point out that I am using my cell phone because that's what I was able to use to do my research today. And hopefully that we'll be back to a regular setup on the next one, but might not be. I don't know. We'll find out. From Igor Sushko, Russia's referral program to recruit soldiers launched in the occupied Republic of Tatarstan. Residents are promised 50,000 rubles, or about $500 US, if they can get a person to enlist to go die in Ukraine. Their average monthly salary is $528. Army General Magomed Khanadev, who worked directly under the arrested Deputy Defense Minister Ivanov, is dead at 62 in Moscow. He was a key player in that. We talked about that Ministry of Defense construction projects embezzlement thing a while back. He was one of the big players in it. They stole well over $100 billion over the years through that scam. And now he is turned up dead. This seems to be a regular pattern that we're seeing on that Russia's going through. Anytime the corruption gets bad enough that it's too obvious, they start eliminating the witnesses. Some might claim that certain people might be more motivated than others to eliminate the witnesses. An electrical substation in Sudza in the Kursk region was attacked by Ukrainian drones. As I understand it, knocked power out to quite a few people. Lukoil's Kalachevskaya oil depot blew up from a Ukrainian drone in the Volgograd region as well. So again, Ukraine is still targeting Russia's oil infrastructure. The 5 drones attacked the oil facilities in Kalach-Ondov, Volgograd region. A couple more region fires. This could be the same one. The pictures look kind of similar, but you know what? Blowing up oil depots starts to look kind of the same when you see enough of them. And an electrical substation in the Rostov region in Russia was also struck and burning. Got a lot more on Russia's side today. Medvedev once more confirmed that Russia's ultimate goal is destroying Ukraine completely. And as Anton Herashchenko editorializes, should it succeed, Russia won't stop there. Ukrainian victory is the prerequisite of geopolitical security in the region. Translation of an excerpt from Medvedev's Telegram post here. A moderate political regime will emerge on the ruins of the preserved part of the former Ukraine, but even this will not be the end of Russia's military operation. Even after signing the papers and accepting defeat, the remaining radicals will sooner or later return to power after regrouping their forces, inspired by Russia's Western enemies. And then it will be time to finally crush the scum. Now, this is Medvedev talking here. You'll note something here, though. He didn't say that they would attack the Russian-held portions. He didn't say they would start the war. Just that a pro-Western regime would rise again in the other part of Ukraine. And when that started, the war would start again. To drive a long steel nail into the coffin lid of the Banderite quasi-state, destroy the remnants of its bloody legacy, and return the remaining lands to the bosom of the Russian land. But Russia's enemies will not go anywhere after that. They'll be gathering strength and waiting for a new, convenient excuse to destroy our country. We must be ready for future battles to defend the fatherland. That's funny. I haven't seen any troops on Russian soil. I've only seen Russian troops on everybody else's property. Russia produces almost 8 times more X-101 missiles now than before the full-scale invasion, according to the Financial Times. This is one of Russia's most modern cruise missiles, and the thing is, they don't really say how many they're actually producing. It may be 8 times more, but 8 times more than what previous number. Still, that means that Russia is accelerating their military production, something to be concerned about no matter what. Anton Ereshchenko also states that the strike on Kyiv's hospitals were precisely calculated. This was no mistake. This was no coincidence. They deliberately targeted the children, the crucial children's hospital. This is an intentional war crime to send a message to the world. This is a message to China. Putin communicated with Xi Jinping just the other day in Astana, to India, and to the rest of the non-Western countries. The message is along the following lines. It is necessary to make friends with the strong. The strong is the one who can violate any rules and remain unpunished. The current world order is already dead, and we need to negotiate anew from the position of real power. Putin believes that Russia is stronger than NATO because NATO is afraid of Russia, not vice versa. Message to Ukraine: capitulate. No one will protect you. And the message to the West: your leaders are weak. They can do nothing. You can end up as bad as Ukraine. The NATO summit will not change anything. The U.S. has lost its leadership. Putin broke the system of international law and introduced, instead, the law of force. We've spent a long time dealing with a overall international situation where not all issues were resolved with force. Russia is saying, we got the stick now. We'll beat anybody that doesn't let us take what we want. The classic actions of a dictator. The first Russian warship has entered the port of unrecognized Abkhazia. That's the area of Georgia that the Russians took over, I don't remember, about a decade and a half ago, if I remember correctly. They've now been building a new port facility there. Strangely enough, you would think they would expand their port facilities on their own territory. You'd think Ukraine would have taught them that putting port facilities in countries that aren't yours is a real challenge. Yeah, everything gets refreshed when I'm trying to go through here. Yesterday morning in Simferopol, the inscription "Death to Putin" was noticed at a bus stop. Russian police arrived at the scene only about 12 o'clock or high noon. That means that out of dozens of Simferopol residents who saw this inscription for 5 to 6 hours, no one was outraged by its veracity. That has now been erased. That indicates to me that there's a bigger partisan movement in Crimea than Russia wants to acknowledge. However, Russia is always ready for war. That's right, they've dropped 4 more aerial bombs on their own region of Belgorod. This was one on Shebekino, one on Petrovsky Farm, and two more near the villages of Krytilog and Kotmysk. So the Russians continue to bomb their own property, their own territory, mostly because their pilots are probably a little bit scared and the equipment is probably not that good. Russian crude oil exports have dropped significantly over the last week, from a drop of about 990,000 barrels per day to 2.67 million barrels, the largest decline since Russia's invasion. Previous week, the exports were at 3.66 million barrels per day. Since I'm at the end there, I'm going to quickly just address Luciano's comment. Yes, the law of the strong dominating the weak is brutal, and primitive, definitely unenlightened. It's just a bad thing to be in the middle of. Never a good situation when the strong get what they want and the weak get destroyed. Let's go ahead and move over to the international material here. According to Igor Sushko, Lukoil, one of Russia's state largest oil producers, has 194 gas stations in the northeast United States, according to their website. I would love to see what they are, because I don't think I've ever seen a Lukoil facility anywhere. Is it under somebody else's name? Or maybe you guys in the Northeast can tell me if you've seen a Lukoil gas station up in your neck of the woods. Today's Russian papers write almost nothing about Monday's devastating missile attack on Ukraine, but one paper has an interesting take on Viktor Orban's peace mission. After visiting Russia and China, Orban may pass the info he has collected to Trump's team. Interesting perspective, just to say the least. Now, this comes from Anthony Blinken, so take it with a grain of salt here. As we speak, the transfer of F-16 jets is underway, coming from Denmark and the Netherlands. Those jets will be flying in the skies of Ukraine this summer to make sure that Ukraine can continue to effectively defend itself against the Russian aggression. They'll have newly trained pilots on the F-16. They can treat them like Russian hardware, if they will, but if they do, they will not get the maximum benefit out of them. If they treat them like Western hardware, they will find them to be a great asset. The question is going to be, will they have the time to do so? Will they have the time to learn? Norway even ponied up 6 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine with deliveries starting this year. Ukraine's ability to defend itself against air attacks is crucial in its battle against Russia. Norway has now decided to donate 6 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. We plan to start delivering the aircraft in the course of 2024. Even New Zealand is ponying up an aid package worth 6 million New Zealand dollars, or 3.68 million US. This includes 2.45 million for the drone coalition and 1.23 million for medical needs. It's always amazing to me that countries are just providing as much as they can spare. It's good. It's good thing. It's being not just a good neighbor, but being a good citizen and a good ally. The new Prime Minister of the UK has stated that Ukraine can use their Storm Shadow missiles to strike targets in Russia. So while the US is still dithering about, the UK has basically said, go for it. If you can get them to those airfields, take them out. That's the way to deal with it. You may have noticed in the last week and a half or so, I don't think I mentioned it per se, but there has been a U.S. military bases or an increased threat level, an increased security level. Well, apparently there's intelligence on Russian sabotage threats that prompted that rise. I do not know if that has changed, but at this point in time, they're remaining on high alert as far as I know. The U.S. also announced a $2 billion loan to help bolster Poland's arsenal with F 35s, Patriots, and Abrams tanks. Now, this is an interesting one to me because Poland is basically the next target if Russia gets through there in any significant numbers. And putting all that hardware in Poland at least gives NATO something to fight back with. That said, if Poland is pretty good about having good hardware, anything they think they can spare, they've already sent to Ukraine. They may have more they can spare if there's enough coming in to fill the gap, especially with those F 35s coming. Even Switzerland has ponied up and joined in the sanctions package against Russia. That's for the 14th one. This one targets entrepreneurs, propagandists, and representatives of the armed forces and judicial system. Iran, on the other hand, has expanded missile production following an agreement to supply weapons to Russia, according to Reuters. Planet Labs has provided satellite images showing more than 30 new structures at the Modaris military base in the Kashir missile complex near Tehran. Iranian government sources confirm that these bases are being expanded to increase the production of drones and missiles intended for sale to Russia, Hezbollah, and Yemen. Houthis in Yemen. Iran continues to outfit and equip pretty much anybody that is willing to attack the U.S. and its allies. Now, there was some rumblings that the elections in Iran resulted in a more pro-U.S. President, but actions speak an awful lot louder than words. Just saying. From Knoll Reports, Japan has handed over 2 Niken demining machines to the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. Japan has been getting even more involved lately. Originally, I would normally have said that the Asian countries probably would have stayed uninvolved. But even they are recognizing that if the dictators are not opposed, things are going to explode in their neck of the woods too. The North Korean military is already on its way to Russia, while the EU struggles to create a common position on even sending instructors to Ukraine. That's right, a North Korean, quote, elite military training delegation has left for Russia. This visit marks the first military exchange between the two countries since they signed their pact for closer military and strategic cooperation. And the U.S., I already mentioned this one earlier. Let's go back to North Korea for just a moment, though. South Korea is getting just incensed. They're very ticked off about this whole situation between North Korea and Russia. And the fact is that North Korea has already said they're sending an engineering battalion to help out in Ukraine for helping Russia, that is. Words is that it's going to be behind the scenes working on infrastructure, not direct combat. But they put their troops on the ground in Ukraine on Russia's behalf. What's really stopping us? Really, what's really stopping us? And that's kind of the international front right there. Let's go ahead and move over to what's going on the front lines. And I don't have any interesting extras today, so if you're, so we'll be going right to the end right after I get done here with the front lines. I do want to invite you to pipe up and give any comments or ask any questions. I'll try and get you answers on the fly as we go. Now, the deep state map has been totally and widely changed. I'm still getting used to the changes, so bear with me as I get you into the place here. This is from today. The enemy occupied Yevanivka. Let's go ahead and tag that and back out. Yevanivka is south of New York, which is just north of Avdiivka and south of Kurdyamivka. That'll put it right, kind of get it centered right about there. And we'll zoom back in. New York itself is also apparently contested now. So we're seeing that stuff happen as well. And there's this bit about advancing near Yurivka, which I think Yeah, that's still in New York area. Okay, so that's the update on that part from the deep state map. There is some other things going from the last couple of days that we will address here in a little bit here, but there's also some interesting stories that have popped up around what's going on the front lines. Let's just show this photo real quick here. These Ukrainian defenders spent 70 days surrounded, and Ukraine resupplied them using drones and drone drop to resupply food, water, ammunition. This entire group worked for that position for 70 days without rotation. The operation to break through the logistics route to the guys who were surrounded lasted more than 2 months. While we were trying to clear the way, the fighters held a circular defense, repelling the occupiers' attacks around the clock. The only way to supply them was through drones, which we used to deliver ammunition, food, and water, according to the 225th Battalion. Quite the story, don't you think? Pretty crazy and pretty insane to think that for 70 days these guys were having to wait for the next drone and wonder if it's one from Russia or their own. From their own with supplies, from Russia with death. War Gonzo's overall report here. Let's go ahead and get it translated real fast here. Uh, Generally, kind of talked about most of it already. We know about Zaporizhia area, positional battles, no major changes. Donetsk front, the Russians are taking nibbles everywhere, ka-chunk, 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 trying to keep on moving forward. Nothing big, but every little bit counts, as they say. Chasov Yar, the way he phrases this tells me that he is stretching to spin it in a positive fashion. Now, am I saying that things are going really well for Ukraine over near Chasov Yar? No. But he's really stretching to make it sound like they're making progress in an area where they've been stymied repeatedly in the last few weeks. And Kharkiv with heavy fighting in Vovchansk and the Globkoye area. And they says that Ukrainians are continuing to bring up reserves to carry out further counterattacks. That's a pretty good overview of the situation on the front lines. Now, the Russians did claim that they had captured Yasnoborodivka, but the Ukrainian state that's a lie. Watch it for a couple of days. This is one of the situations where you got to watch it carefully because the official story may change in a day or so. Does Russia have it right now? Maybe when the statement was made, no. But it might change in a few days. Then there's the defense intelligence updates from the UK. Open source reporting has highlighted that Ukrainian forces have damaged or destroyed 26 Russian naval vessels operating in the Black Sea between February 2022 and June 2024. The strikes have occurred across the northern region of the Black Sea and within the Sea of Azov. There's been an increase in the frequency and level of damage caused by attacks around the Crimean Peninsula over the last year, with nearly two-thirds of strikes occurring within this period. So translation, things are getting more serious around Crimea and the Black Sea, and it's being stepped up by Ukrainian forces. From Null Reports, reporting from Reuters, Russia lacks the munitions and troops to start a major offensive in Ukraine and would need to secure significant ammunition supplies from other countries beyond what it already has in order to do so, according to a senior NATO official. He estimated that Russia would be able to maintain its war economy for 3 to 4 more years. The official added that it will be some time before Ukraine has amassed enough munitions and personnel to mount new large-scale offensive operations as well. So, according to NATO, neither side has got the gear or the bodies to truly launch a large offensive. So, I'm not going to say stalemate, because it's clear there are small gains being made by either side. It just means that it's going to be a tough next year or so. From Null Reports, their reports on the front lines, northwest of Avdiivka, Russia is continuing to advance. Geolocated footage confirms Russia has passed Novopokrovska and advanced towards Novoselivka, Persha. Fighting is currently ongoing near the fortifications north of this settlement. And finally, the last item is on the Robotina axis here. You can see, if you look carefully at this picture, the Russians have advanced along this highway, at least as of right now. Now, that does mean that the Robotina area and this area could end up being in a pocket, but that's a lot of real estate that Russia would have to capture in order to create an encirclement. And at current rates, it's clear that Russia is not going to do that, at least not today. And that's everything on the official side. Let's go ahead and see what comments you have from Lucille. Please do your streams, keep your streams going as best you can, despite the challenges. We need the insights you provide. Thank you very much. Robbie says, I saw an interview with Zelensky about the United Nations meeting soon. The interviewer asked if he thought Putin would show up or should show up. Zelensky stated, maybe another representative. The reporter doubled down and asked, would he be willing to speak with Putin? And Zelensky said no. I'm wondering why he is not open to dialogue with Putin. Gee, I wonder. Could it be that Putin has dropped a few missiles on a few children's hospitals lately? It's pretty clear that Vladimir Putin has already stated outright to Viktor Orban that there is no peaceful resolution at this point in time. So there's no point in actually carrying out negotiations at all, because Russia is not willing to negotiate at all. They're only willing to say we get everything we want, and nobody gets anything that they want. Thank you very much also, Luciano, and appreciate you echoing Lucille's comments there. I'm working hard to make sure that we get something together on a regular basis. I would love to be able to do this daily again, but that's not currently in the cards. That said, taking the opportunity to grab the cell phone during breaks and lunchtimes and do a little bit of research and find out what's going on could mean that this format is the one that you get at least sometimes, at least while I'm away at school. Let me know what you think of it. Is this working for you? If you watch on a cell phone, this might actually work really well. But if you're not on a cell phone, probably not so good. So let me know what you think as well in the comments. And on those notes, thank you. I can't tell you how special it is to have you guys spend a little bit of your time with me discussing what's going on in Ukraine. I think we're all emotionally invested in what goes on there. I think we all wish we could do something to make a difference there. At this point, I just hope that my voice is crying out in the wilderness for Ukraine, and that our leaders will be wise, generous, capable, and kind, so that the wonderful people of Ukraine will be able to have peace once more, united fully as one nation. And that's everything for today. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.